Welcome to part 2 of this Galaxy Grudge match. We said we'd be back.
The future is doomed, Ducko. A little green slab of clay won't stop Skynet.
You think I'm giving up so easily? I'm Ducko, damn it!
I hate to crush Ducko's dreams of winning with a character he's nostalgic for that came out in the early 70s, but I'm siding with the T-1000 here. Gumby certainly has options to take the T-1000 on, but I don't see him being able to pull a lot of them off. Leading the T-1000 to the steel mill would require prior knowledge of his weaknesses, and also Gumby would have to be really cool under pressure and a hyper-competent strategist. And he's never been in a situation like that before. Not only is this a world not made of clay like he's used to, but he's never fought someone out for blood like the T-1000. Gumby's gonna be terrified, he's just a kid after all. And if he cracks under pressure even once, John Connor dies and the T-1000 wins the scenario. Ducko brings up that one clay glob resisting bullets, but those are clay bullets on what's clearly a much thicker wad of clay than Gumby. Gumby's survivability comes down to his ability to reform after being easily broken apart, so if he tries to act as a shield for John Connor, the bullet is going to go right through the both of them. That's about what this boils down to. The T-1000 just needs one good shot, and I don't think Gumby has it in him to keep John Connor out of the T-1000's line of fire. At least for long enough for him to find a way to defeat the T-1000 for good. John Connor won't be coming back from this one.
Okay, I'll say a few things. Like I already mentioned, Gumby has been in a high-pressure situation with a killer robot before, one where he, much like the group in T2, had to regroup with others and strategize around everything. Also, not everything Gumby encounters is made of clay. He has visited actual history books, the story Don Quixote, circuses, and other locations with real-life people. He is aware that clay people and flesh people are different. It's literally a plot point in a Gumby comic that he is considered a golem to display in a circus, and if his clay properties weren't different from humans, that wouldn't be considered special enough to display in said circus.
But there's a big difference between Gumby's stereotypical must-destroy robots and the highly intelligent, world-conquering robots of Skynet. The T-1000 is unlike any of the robots Gumby has seen, and is genuinely competent. Plus, his liquid metal also helps make him much more of a unique threat. As for Gumby, being able to tell the difference between his clay self and John, that's a really weird thing in this debate. It's hard to tell who's a clay being and who's not in Gumby, given the animation style. But even still, if Gumby knows that John is not made of clay, he still can't protect John with anything. T-1000 just needs to shoot right through him and get John.
The main argument here from Biffweed is the density of the clay. Given that Gumby is made of a little green slab of clay explicitly, and he made the monster himself out of clay, I don't actually think it's a bad assumption that their properties are similar. Even if Gumby's clay is not dense enough, there are numerous ways around this, like him merging with Pokey, or growing giant, which is indeed a thing Gumby can do. I mean, what the hell is T-1000 gonna do to a giant Gumby? Not to mention that being a clay shield for him isn't the only way around this, given that Gumby can split into multiple Gumbys, and can even fly in multiple forms as well.
These are good ideas for Gumby, and I think becoming a giant would probably be enough to stop a standard pistol, but I get the feeling a Gatling gun could mow him down. Also, where's John gonna go when he's giant? On his shoulder? Just aim up and fire away. It's only just now hit me that this entire time I've been advocating for the death of a teenager. Anyways, while these are clever enough ways around the T-1000, I think it's only useful in their first encounter. Once they initially escape him, he'll be able to follow them and plan his assassination. I really don't think Gumby's gonna be able to outwit the T-1000, and I can actually see the T-1000 leading him into a trap while pretending to be John's mother. The T-800 was able to deduce that the mother was actually the T-1000, but I don't think Gumby can.
You dismissed the Gumby robot that Gumby fought, but he has way more intelligence than you initially think. I already mentioned that this was a robot that could directly analyze and predict Gumby's moves, much like the Terminators. And this was a robot who, alongside a group of several ones that looked like Gumby's friends, fooled all of them and captured them. But Gumby saw through the facade of this, unlike his friends. So if John Connor is already skeptical, like he was in the original scene, and Gumby has already encountered this situation, and was the one who saw through it at first, as well as eventually figuring out the robot's weaknesses, and coordinating the plan with others to take them down, much like what happened in T2. I don't think Gumby will be as easily fooled as you and Biff initially think. I won't try to dispute that Gumby is the underdog here. However, the two main arguments against him protecting John that seem to just be gun and truck are quite pointless. Yes, the bullets from the gun could pass through Gumby, but he can just stretch his arm and jam any firearm T-1000 gets his hands on before he can use it. And since he is pretty much invulnerable, there's very little the Terminator can do to prevent this. As for the truck, sure, Pokey won't outrun it, but a magical clay horse is sure as hell more agile than an ordinary truck, and can easily bait T-1000 to just crash into a wall or fall off a cliff. Plus, the argument that Gumby could just jam anything mechanical with his body applies here too, and since you set this up as Gumby doing a T-800 impersonation, he would probably be quite willing to do so. As for actually disposing of the Terminator problem, I have next to no idea. Maybe Gumby could somewhat fuse with the malleable robot and navigate the resulting green-silver mess into somewhere hot, where he will outlive the Terminator, thanks to his better heat resistance.
You say that Gumby will just be able to jam the guns each and every time the T-1000 pulls it out, but do you really think that T-1000 will stop after his gun gets tossed away? He can still assassinate John from a distance with a sniper, and I also feel like the bullets are still going to pass through a normal-sized Gumby's hands if he tries to use them to jam the gun. I mean, a simple baseball was able to leave a gaping hole in Gumby's body. What do you think a bullet's gonna do to him? Also, since when is Pokey magical? Are you confusing him with Jake the dog?
I guess magical is relative. They've dealt with magic in Gumby before, but it's not an inherent property to beings in Gumby's world either. The clay is animated because it just is. That's just how it works in Gumby. And I mentioned the flying and giant Gumby methods before. A giant Gumby can just knock anything out, or take anything away from a distance.
Maybe Gumby flying away with John isn't the best option. It's kinda hard to miss a giant-ass green helicopter flying through the sky. The T-1000 just has to shoot the hell out of the helicopter until he hits John. Gumby's better off trying to find a real helicopter. Becoming a giant is also something I don't think will ultimately win it for Gumby. Squashing the T-1000 would do nothing, but he could theoretically fake his death and wait for Gumby to walk away, before getting back up and impaling John through Gumby's belly.
Seems like Gumby can just drive a car or a plane out of nowhere anyways, so a helicopter wouldn't be too out of the question.
Maybe the T-1000 flies on and hijacks the helicopter. He tells Gumby to get out, and so he jumps off and kills himself.
Gumby could survive the fall, but it's not a wise decision to just leave John there, which indeed he wouldn't do.
Also, clay and liquid metal don't fuse well, as this one clip I found showed me. Gumby's gonna get blown the fuck up!
This is special Gumby clay that doesn't bake in ovens or on the sun. But then again,
There was water on that sun.
those ice beings put it there. It wasn't inherent to that sun. We just have the super potent ice beings. Gumby survived those, while T-1000 would just get frozen, shattered, then thrown into the hot parts of the sun. Wimp.
The high-stakes mission is something that I believe outclasses Gumby. Gumby may be skilled at shapeshifting, but Gumby's intellect and maturity is something I believe will lead to his downfall. He's a kiddish, cartoonish entity, and doesn't have real life and death manhunts programmed into his brain like his opponent. No threat that Gumby has faced was a literal killing machine that has an AI brain that tries to desperately slaughter a child with no holding back. Gumby's a clay entity, so his durability won't resist bullets. I'm Team T-1000 to the end.
I've already talked about Gumby has dealt with an analytical robot that was trying to kill him and his friends directly.
I would say, though, there's a difference between the robot that the Blockheads made and the ones that Skynet made. The Gumby robot was exceptionally clever, but it's not like he's shown to be an amazing supercomputer like the Terminators are. Plus, the way that Gumby figured out that robot clone was weak to water was through some outside help. He had friends with him to help solve that, and the only friend he's got here is Pokey.
In the fight with Gumby, the robot was directly analyzing his movements and countering them. This is already fairly similar to what the Terminators do. And the point about Gumby relying on his friends is not necessarily a point against him here, given that he has Pokey, John, and potentially Sarah to plan and deal with the T-1000. The T-800 didn't go solo either.
You've brought up Sarah Connor a few times, saying she could potentially help out Gumby, but really, I don't think she's as useful here as you think. The T-800 is the one who had to fight off the T-1000, and had it not been for him, she wouldn't have lasted long against the T-1000. She's good at surviving, but not really for teaching Gumby about his weaknesses.
This plays into my point though. They're altogether useful for the plan, and even more so now. Rather than just one T-800, we have Gumby and Pokey, both of whom can separate into multiple individual moving beings that are all controlled under the same mind and can be in multiple places at once. Okay, for my real prediction, I suppose Gumby isn't as helpless as Max lets on. He has been in fights before. His malleable nature will prove useful in sustaining in a fight. He can easily protect John by himself as a shield, and he has been mature. Given his game adventures, films, and cartoons, he has had to take big risks and calculate how to work things out. T-1000 may be out of his league, but so is Gumby. The Liquid Man may be a toughie, but Gumby is agile and quite a good thinker on his own terms. Sure, he may be in a new world, but I think he could learn early on why humans are squishy and could protect John afterwards. That's how he adapts to other worlds that he goes to. Plus, in spite of knowing a lot about the Terminator, T-1000 still got surprised by him. Even if they meet before, it would take a long time for 1K to become fully aware of this beast. And even then, that might not help. If the green glob of clay is able to adapt and learn quickly, then it's just game over. And if the T-1000 learns to adapt, that's just one stepping stone out of many more to do. Simply put, T-1000's chances look pretty hot, not gonna lie.
I agree that Gumby has shown some expert adventuring skills, and has probably been on more adventures than any Terminator has. But my issue here is that the adventures in the Gumby world are pretty much tame and rarely ever get dead serious. Like, I've never seen someone trying to kill a kid in Gumby, nor have I seen Gumby face off against an outright assassin. These are child-friendly adventures after all. Why would they tackle the subject of trained assassins? I mean, Gumby did go to hell before, but he didn't do anything. Santa Claus, of all people, saved his ass.
John and Sarah's whole lives weren't killer cyborgs before their encounters either. And Gumby has such a variety, ranging from not only the time he did deal with a killer robot himself, but also everything from dragons to cowboys to wizards. Gumby can't be too surprised by all of this.
The problem is, with both John and Sarah, someone from the future arrived to save them. Someone who knew what the Terminators were capable of in one case, and another outright being a Terminator. On their own, they would have died, and I don't think Gumby and Pokey are suitable replacements.
Gumby is frequently ending up in unfamiliar worlds and figuring them out as he goes along. With the wealth of experience he has, and the situation actually being somewhat similar to one he's already been in, I think this is less a fish out of water and more a fish being put in slightly different water.
Oh boy, this is a fun one. I think I'm gonna side with the T-1000, albeit barely. Props to Ducko for actually convincing me that Gumby of all characters can keep up with the T-1000. If this were a normal versus match, I think Gumby would win, being more resistant to damage, versatile, and even having experience with robot duplicates. But the T-1000's goal isn't to kill Gumby, but to kill John Connor. And I don't think Gumby has any counters to the amount of ways the T-1000 can sneak up and kill John. He can shapeshift into the floor or wall to ambush John, transform into other people, or just snipe John like Max said. Since Gumby doesn't have any prior knowledge, like the T-800 did, he wouldn't be able to prepare any defense or keep a better lookout for the T-1000. Gumby has no X-ray or heat-seeking vision that will be able to find a stalking T-1000. The T-1000 is very smart and would realize that trying to kill Gumby is a lost cause and think of a different strategy. Maybe trick Gumby by faking his own death and then ambushing him. Also, I don't think Gumby will be able to leave the Terminator world and go back to Gumby Land. If Gumby went into the movie on his own accord, then maybe. But thanks to the fact that this involved outside interference from Bill Cipher's reality warping... Oh, Ducko, your fucking funny gag is gonna be your undoing. I don't think he'd be able to make his way back. Especially if Bill was having fun watching a giant Clayboy fight a robotic mercenary. You just had to have the funny, didn't you? In the end, while I do believe that Gumby would be a very difficult obstacle for the T-1000 to work around, I believe with his superior intelligence, stealth, and tactics, the future leader of the human resistance would be no more!
I'll give you that the T-1000's ability to turn into a floor or a wall is actually pretty useful, but I've mostly seen him use it to sneak up on people, then slowly morph into his actual body. Not actually be a floor, then just pop up with a spike or something. So by the time he's there, he's pretty obviously the T-1000 at this point. Gumby could probably pull this trick as well, and go much quicker back into his regular form, as well as pulling tricks like turning into multiples of himself, gumballs, vehicles, animals, building scaling caterpillars, and flying butterflies. The sheer versatility outweighs what the T-1000 can do.
I mean, what the hell is turning into a bunny gonna do for Gumby, or a fly? Sure, he's versatile, but the T-1000 has plenty of versatility that's focused around killing people, while Gumby's forms don't really act as combat. He just does it as a goof more often than not.
If Gumby can turn into a lizard or something, the T-1000 won't immediately know that's Gumby. Meaning Gumby just has one more avenue of sneaking up on T-1000 that the Silver Knot Surfer doesn't have. The only big problem I see here is the sniper shot, but by the time that's tried, which would be way later into the movie, so to speak, Gumby and John would have gone through and gotten many other methods to get around or counter this, like their own weaponry, vehicles, hiding, shielding, all sorts of things. He also didn't use this tactic before. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's something that didn't happen before. So we also cannot assume that Gumby, John, Sarah, or even Pokey, sure, wouldn't have some kind of counter to it in some way.
I know the T-1000 didn't use a sniper in the movie, but Terminators can analyze weapons and use them very effectively. Once he realizes he's fighting Gumby, and he sees how his body works, I think he'll try this. He didn't try this against the T-800 because sniping it would do nothing. The bullet wouldn't go through. But with Gumby, it actually would, and so this is a smart idea.
That's assuming that Gumby is standing right in front of John from a distance, or that there isn't also Pokey. If they're already on the defense of trying to protect John from bullets, Gumby could combine with Pokey and or grow giant again to alter their density. This is a tactic that would come in later, so let's not also assume that Gumby wouldn't figure certain things out through experience. Gumby is basically entirely about problem solving in terms of episode plots.
But it's not like bullets are the only way to carve through Gumby's body. Turning his hands into blades could let him cut through Gumby to slice John. Also, what about that Bill Cipher thing? It was a joke about our ongoing Bill plot, but having it actually in the scenario means that Gumby got forced here against his will.
Carving requires getting up close, and if T-1000 and Gumby are fighting up close, I already think T-1000 is kind of screwed. And John could just move off with Pokey or Sarah while Gumby's beating T-1000's ass. As for Bill Cipher, I think it's like Switzerland and Alvin vs. Muse. But I still think there are ways around this. I don't think either of us should 100% rely on Gumby going into a book as an arguing point, as you'd also have to shrink down John. However, that mall or somewhere nearby probably has a movie theater, which is big enough for them all to go through. That is technically within this world. Gumby's gonna bring John into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, or Drop Dead Fred. Amazing. Might seem like a bit of an uphill battle for the little green guy, but I think Gumby's got a very good chance if he plays his cards right. If you use the time Gumby's dad stretch out of the atmosphere, playfully yours, and scale Gumby to that, I think he's fast enough to evade the T-1000 for a while, long enough to get John Connor somewhere next to inaccessible. With that stretching power, Gumby could get John Connor a few good miles away, or even just to a different country. In that time that John Connor would be totally safe, Gumby could retrieve an arsenal he's experienced with. In a fight, I'm not sure if either can exactly put the other down permanently, but with that aforementioned arsenal, Gumby isn't without options. Gumby's lightsaber seems to utilize heat, so if he could get his hands on that again, that'd likely do the trick. In the episode The Racing Game, Gumby was able to turn his lower half into a car. This car could hold more than one person at once, and was fast enough to overtake race cars, which are generally faster than trucks and motorcycles. No need to rely on the horse when you can turn into a vehicle that's more than fast enough to get the job done. So yeah, I don't think Gumby's as doomed as most are saying.
I'm not sure what to make of Gumby's father stretching into outer space that quickly. That's some speed feat, but I don't know if Gumby scales, I guess. I mean, he's never beaten up his dad, has he? It's also probably inconsistent for Gumby, and his dad didn't really do it voluntarily, he was scared. I don't know, it seems weird to include this as a serious game-changing argument.
I will say that at the beginning and end of the Gumby movie, that Gumby and Pokey fly around in outer space as clay slabs, then come down to Earth and form into their regular Gumby and Pokey forms. Not to mention that the first episode of Gumby involves him going to the moon, so Gumby is much more used to space travel than the T-1000. That's another avenue that he has that the villain from the Double Dragon movie doesn't. I'm running out of other ways to refer to him.
Gumby becoming a race car is pretty good for him, but I've always had that issue of him being clay. I get it, he can become large so the bullets won't go through, but in most instances he's just normal Gumby. And it's not like bullets are the only option, he's still got the blades. He can still slice through and get John. I don't even think the T-1000 will fuck around with Gumby that much if John is running in the other direction. He'd probably just try to evade Gumby and continue his pursuit. Gumby can't always be next to John.
The point about bringing John to another country, or even just another state, is actually a really good one. And one that's even more conceivable than bringing John to another medium. Just drop off John at McDonald's or something with some money for an hour, then keep fighting the T-1000 back in LA.
You're trying to get McDonald's to give you another win? Dastardly. But okay, I don't think it's smart to stretch John to another location on Earth. Going that fast would melt John's skin and turn him into a skeleton.
Gumby doesn't have to go super duper atmospheric re-entry to get John out there quickly. Do you think a plane or a car is gonna automatically kill John by traveling?
Alright, now we've got our last comment of the match. A very good one, yes. I'm going with Gumby. The reason why is how time travel works in the Terminator world. Let me explain. In the Terminator movies, before Genesis, you could not change the past with time travel. Like how in the first Terminator movie, the T-800 is there to kill John's mum, only to cause him to be born in the first place. John needs to live because he needs to be there for the future. Gumby wins because of the logic of the Terminator world. Huh? You're saying Gumby wins because Terminator logic would make the T-1000 unable to win?
Well, obviously. Everything is inevitable, so things have to work out to where the T-1000 dies and John Connor is still in the future. Otherwise, you create a time paradox.
I don't think we can really factor that into this debate. Maybe you'll get a Legion brand T-1000 instead, if you start messing around with all that shit. Ugh.
I'll be honest, this isn't our main deciding factor, believe it or not. We have to actually decide the situation at hand rather than relying on this. Also in this logic, Gumby probably also has to die in the lava as well. Dang. Let's actually get to our verdict.
Alright, so here we are. This match has been a long debate between me and Ducko. We've actually spent a pretty long time trying to decide this one.
I fought hard, and I think there are a lot of ways for Gumby to defeat the T-1000. Bringing the T-1000 to a location he can't survive, taking John out of the way, separating out into multiple Gumbys, or coordinating a larger plan with others. But the problem I realized here is that these are all very complicated plans. The T-1000 has simpler ways to succeed, like finding an opening to shoot John Connor, or turning into someone and temporarily tricking John, if not Gumby or Pokey themselves.
Hasta la vista, Gumby. I'm happy to have won something for Terminator 2, one of my favorite action movies. But I also feel bad that one of your childhood icons had to lose like this. But ultimately, yes, the T-1000 and Gumby both had ways to win this, but it's the T-1000 who's smarter, as he is a supercomputer who can plan incredibly well. Turning into Sarah Connor is actually a viable tactic. Gumby doesn't know her, and John hasn't seen her for a bit, so he wouldn't be able to suspect it if she isn't acting exactly like herself. If Gumby decides to not trust Sarah Connor, he may inadvertently get John to turn against him, with John believing in who he thinks is his mom.
Gumby can be cautious, and he can plan, but the problem is that the T-1000 just needs one opening to get John Connor. In this situation, Gumby is replacing an analytical robot who has prior knowledge of other Terminator models. While Gumby has figured out things before, like I figured out, and others have been telling me, it's pretty much just one screw-up needed for the T-1000 to kill John. I think in a straight-up fight, Gumby could actually beat the T-1000, but that is a different situation from doing that and also ensuring John's safety. It's shaky territory to say that he can always act as a shield for John, which is more certain for the T-800.
Now I'll always be wanting a death battle between Gumby and the T-1000, but that will probably never happen. Ever. Regardless, this was a pretty fun match to do with you, Ducko, even if this was a more upsetting verdict.
I think we can find ways to make it not as depressing. Maybe. Gumby was exhausted. At every turn, the T-1000 was there, and Pokey was getting tired of running around the whole time. They couldn't seem to find Sarah Connor for John, and so John didn't seem very fond of the Clay duo. The gang found shelter in a steel mill, and took a seat, until Gumby heard someone arrive. Gumby turned around and saw the T-1000, who immediately shot Gumby through the head. Gumby seemed unmoved, as the bullet wound in his head slowly began to regenerate. However, Gumby knew something was wrong when he heard Pokey exclaim, "Holy Toledo!" Gumby turned around to see that the bullet had gone past his body, and had shot John Connor in the head. Gumby looked distraught, and the T-1000 wandered off into the world, his job complete. The T-1000 soon realized that he would now have to wait it out in the real world, until Skynet took over. During that time, he grew a conscience, and regretted his actions. He even grew a beard somehow and got a family. Gumby, meanwhile, rode away from the steel mill with Pokey, and was bummed that he had failed. But Pokey bought him some ice cream, and the two decided to leave this incident behind them, as they returned home.